Have you ever been lost? Maybe out hiking, maybe in the car, that happens to everyone, maybe just at the shops, not sure where you are. It's not a great feeling, is it? I'm usually good at working out where I am and where I'm going and directions and orientation and that kind of thing. But unfortunately, that often means that I don't like to look at maps. I prefer to follow my nose. Back in New Year's Eve 2019-2020, my family and I found ourselves in Gijón in Spain, celebrating New Year's Eve. Our walk back from the town plaza to our unit should have been quite simple. But of course, I followed my instincts and added an extra hour onto our trip. An extra hour in a foreign town, in a foreign country, in the middle of the night. Not wonderful. Sorry, family. It would be no surprise to me if all of us, to some extent, have lost a little bit of our orientation over the last 2 years, because it's been an extraordinary couple of years. Routines have changed and changed again. Tomorrow is not quite as certain as it used to be. Economics are all over the place. Our health, well, we don't take that for granted. And then many of us are nervous about just getting back into life, surrounded by a lot of people. Rules change every few weeks. Work looks quite different. Church has been online. Non-pandemic related difficulties don't stop just because of a pandemic. Many people haven't had holidays. Things that we hold dear, like seeing our family, aren't always guaranteed. Loneliness, and so on. So many challenges mean that many of us just need a little bit of a reset, a reminder about where we're going. So, 2 simple questions today as we look to head forward together in the right direction. Number 1, where are we at? And number 2, where's the world at? And because we want to answer these questions through a Christian lens, we need to look at the Bible. We've just read John 15. John 15 is a tale of 2 halves. It actually answers the 2 questions that I've just posed. Verses 1 to 17 are about us and what is most important for us. And then verses 18 onwards is about the world and the world's relationship to Jesus and Jesus' people. Now, we're going to be preaching in depth on this passage sometime next year. So I'll simply pull out some key truths today that we can have a look at. Let me give you the context, first of all. John 15 is on the night before Good Friday. Jesus is having a meal with his disciples and he's giving them final words. Final words matter. 3 years ago, just before Dad died, he gave each of the family a letter. That carries weight. Imagine you're in your final words. You're probably going to want to say what really matters. Well, that's exactly what Jesus is doing. If we need to recalibrate our lives a bit at the moment, we need to listen very carefully to what he is saying about what is really important. John 15 verse 5, Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. The first 17 verses of this chapter are a challenge by Jesus to remain connected to him. He is the vine, we are the branches. That's a lifeblood connection. Now, the metaphor of the vine is often used in the Old Testament and nearly always used to describe the people of God. Isaiah 5 is a classic chapter where God brings the vine out of Egypt. So brings his people out of Egypt. He plants it, gives them somewhere to live. He waters. He waits for good fruit. But he gets nothing. Hundreds of years later, a single man comes along and says, I am the true vine. And to have true life, you must be connected to me. Friends, as we reset our lives, our priorities, that is the most important thing. That you belong to Jesus, that you are connected to Jesus, that you remember your lifeblood comes from being connected to Jesus. And so remain in him, nourish that connection with him, bear fruit through him. In life, we all have many labels on us, don't we? I think of mine for a minute. I'm a father. I'm a son. I'm a father-in-law. I'm an Anglican. I'm an evangelical. I'm a Grove Church member. I'm a Roosters supporter. I'm a friend. I'm a pastor, and so on. But the label above all, the label that matters most, is the label that says, I belong to Jesus. What Revelation 5 tells me, that Jesus purchased me, that Jesus purchased people from every tribe and language by the shedding of his blood. You are alive by staying connected to him, just as much as a branch is alive by staying connected to the trunk. How do you remain in him? Verse 10, if you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. Verse 12, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Verse 16, I chose you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. The Old Testament vine did not bear good fruit, it only bore bad fruit. But we are connected to Christ through the Father's love, by Jesus' death and pouring out of grace upon us, and through the indwelling Holy Spirit. And we are connected to go and bear good fruit, the fruit of faithfulness, the fruit of obedience, the fruit of pleasing God, the fruit of love, fruit that will last into eternity. Very simply, God made us to be connected to him, to remain in him, and we do that by listening to him and responding to him. Obedience is the fruit of being connected to Jesus. And the result of that will be our joy. Verse 11, I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. So friends, as we reset for the future, remember Jesus' words to his disciples. It's a bit of a reset for them as they are about to lose him and move forward. And what he said to them is that you are connected to me. You are a person of Christ. That is your identity. I have chosen you. I have saved you. And you have life as you remain connected to me. And to remain connected to me is to seek and obey my will. Well, friends, in February next year, at church we're going to have a series called Back to Basics. And it's a bit of a reset month, not just a one-off, as we think about what it means to remain in the vine. The Word of God, prayer, gathering as the church, serving. But heading into 2022, let me ask you two questions as we think about our own reset. Number one, how is your connection to the vine at the moment? After a crazy 18 months, how are you and Jesus? Almost without fail, if I ask that question of someone and they tell me not great, they will also say that they have not been guarding their heart, that they've not been drawing near to God, that they have not been in prayer or in the Word, that they've lost sight of grace. Is right now the time for you to take some time out and reorient your heart's loves. The second question is this: what active role will you play in seeing your brothers and sisters in Christ grow as disciples? What will you be doing? How will you love them? Earlier on in the night, Jesus has said to his disciples, John 13:34, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. As a church, we've been given two great commands: to make disciples and to grow disciples. And so, heading into next year, we will keep teaching the Bible. We will train and encourage each other in godly living and in evangelism. We will seek to reach the unconverted. We will challenge sin and unbelief. And we will work hard at seeing disciples grow deeper in their faith. And we all have a part to play in that. I think we're well placed. We are a church that offers opportunities to connect with all ages, from the youngest to the oldest, and that's one of the joyful things about belonging to the saints at St Aidan's. We are seeking to respond to the changing face and the changing needs of our community, looking at specific groups that we can impact. We have a welcoming church. I have great confidence any time someone walks in our front door that they will be welcomed. I'm thankful for the staff we have, especially over the last 2 years under challenging conditions. I'm also pleased to say, good time to say, that we're going to be adding a student minister to our team next year, a delightful young lady called Mel. And Mel will have a focus on working with our young women. Financially, we're okay. Yes, if you've been following our charts, we're behind in all three budgets. But given that we are managing a building repayment, and alongside the fact that we didn't actually physically meet for about 9 months in the past 2 years, I'm actually overwhelmed at how we're going. I'm incredibly thankful. Your stewardship of what God has entrusted to you has been faithful and generous. Next year will be a challenge though. We'll put out a draft budget next Sunday, and I'll talk more about that then. But the main reason, really the only important reason why I believe we are well placed is this. This is not our church. It's God's church. We are serving Him. He is sovereign. He is the one in control. We are working hard to be faithful to Him. We have His gospel to proclaim that is life-saving and life-changing. And that gospel that we proclaim is the only answer, is the only hope, and we are witnesses to that. We are serving Him as we do that. And so can I say, don't be ashamed to stand up for what you believe, even when it is mocked or you are mocked. Be proud, because the gospel is wonderful. Paul tells us in Romans 1 that the gospel is God's power to save those who do not yet believe. This is God's church, and He continues to work through His people here. It's such a joy to belong to the fellowship of the saints at Grove Church. I, as a pastor, delight in you. And I'm so thankful that I can be partnering with you day by day, week by week, year by year, serving our wonderful God and King. Well, we do have a part 2 of our passage to look at, which is also our second question, where is the world at? But I actually want to pause at that point, and I want to pray, first of all, for us, for our church. And I'm going to pray using New Testament words, a number of verses. So let me pray. Heavenly Father, by your grace, may your people here at St Aidan's love one another with brotherly affection. May they keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers over a multitude of sins. May we live in harmony with one another. May we agree with one another and live in peace, so that the God of love and peace will be with us. May we welcome one another as Christ has welcomed us. Heavenly Father, by your grace, may your people here bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. May we behave with all humility and gentleness and patience, bearing with one another in love. May we be kind to one another and compassionate, and encourage one another and build each other up. May we submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Heavenly Father, by your grace, may your people here at St Aidan's know how to forgive one another, that we might stir up one another to love and good works, that we will not neglect to meet together, but encourage one another, and all the more as we see the day approaching. May we confess our sins to one another and pray for each other. May we show hospitality without grumbling. And as each of us has received a gift, may we use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's grace. And may we clothe ourselves with humility towards one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Amen. Well, friends, let's continue on, I guess looking at the second part of our passage, but let me start with a story. In July last year, two Christians, Hannah and her good friend Michelle, who has autism, had lunch together at a local cafe in Canberra. Servers at the cafe saw the two ladies reading the Bible and praying and assumed that Hannah was taking advantage of Michelle. When the two women went up to the counter to pay, the manager ordered Michelle outside and confronted Hannah and accused her of brainwashing and told her never to come back to the cafe again. Both women were incredibly upset. Michelle holds tertiary qualifications and particularly took offence to the assumption that she was vulnerable. This is just one of hundreds of stories that you'll find at australiawatch.com.au. Let me give you an example from law. If you pray with or speak with another person about gender with the aim of persuading them according to religious beliefs, you will face a prison sentence of up to 10 years. Now, I can think of a handful of countries where that might be true. Well, guess what? From February next year on, that will be true in Victoria. That, along with a number of other laws, which will significantly curtail religious freedom. Friends, the Bible is totally clear that in the last days, which is now, there will be trouble for God's people. Jesus says it very plainly in verse 18 and following. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. But as it is, you do not belong to the world. I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. My two questions at the start were about where are we at and where is the world at? Jesus has talked to us in the 17 verses about the absolute necessity for us to remain in Him, to be connected to Him. That's our priority. What about the world? Well, the world Jesus talks about in verses 18 and following. And I want to say this, the world has not changed and will not ever change before Christ returns. The world hates Jesus and His people. For the person of God, our worldview, our beliefs, our priorities are diametrically opposed to those of the world. Our identity is in Christ, and so as Christ was persecuted, so shall His people be. John 3:19 tells us that human deeds are evil and Christ exposes sin, and that is why He is hated. Sin is so blinding that humans cannot see the very core of their problem, which is the rejection of their Creator God. Friends, we shall not be spared that hatred. We know that we exist to glorify God, to worship Him and to follow Him. And we know that in doing that, we will be living life to the full as we were created to live it. But without God, the human answer is to glorify and enjoy yourself. I guess it's the cult of self-worship, if you like. And there's nothing new about this. It goes right back to Genesis 3. But as society moves further away from God, it's getting louder. And if you don't hold that view, you are seen as a threat. We were made to worship, but we've chosen the wrong thing to worship. At the moment, we are waiting for the Religious Freedom Bill draft number 4 to come out. It probably will happen this week. And that will go before federal parliament, and it's expected to be voted on before the next election. Currently, there are no religious freedoms enshrined in our law. And so this will be important. Please pray about this, because we have seen a disintegration of our freedoms in the last few years. I had a good meeting with our federal MP, David Coleman, during the week to discuss this legislation, but please be praying about it. It does show where we are as a country, that we would need to go in this direction and try to get religious freedom, something that's internationally recognised, try to get it put in our law. And that's because our faith is under attack, as it has never been in this country. But that should not surprise us. This is where the world is at, before, during, and after pandemics. That's the world we live in. But there's also good news at the moment about this world. I reckon it is a great time for evangelism. We are in such a different place to really where we've ever been. Now is the time for evangelism. I think many Christians have recognised the opportunities as they've walked around their neighbourhood, as they've been out and about during lockdown. Relationships have started, people have talked to each other. It's a great thing. Many non-Christians have connected with church through online church services, people that we have never seen before. Most of our society has realised that the future is not quite as sure as what they thought it was, and they're open to discussion. Where do they look for hope and certainty? I think a lot more people are far more open to discussion than they ever have been. Yes, there's antagonism, but many are open to talking. And here's a bit of a weird one. I've noticed that in the last few years, more people know less about Christianity. I actually think that's a good thing. It may be that we're coming out of that time where many people have just had a little bit of cultural Christianity in their background, just enough to vaccinate them against wanting more or accepting an invitation. I reckon there's a lot of people in our community that are not vaccinated against the gospel and are open to listening. I reckon this is great news. So, friends, a couple of reminders to conclude as we refocus. Don't be surprised about the times that we live in. The Bible makes it clear what we are to expect, but I also want to say this: don't be afraid. John 16:33, Jesus says, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world." And friends, remain in the vine. James 4, come near to God and he will come near to you. Seek his will and love one another as Christ has loved us. If we can do that as a church, moving forward, practicing those things that I was praying about earlier, then we shall be so distinctly different to the world around us that many, we pray, will turn to God and will join us at marvelling at his wonder. Heavenly Father, may your name always be praised. Amen.